Yeah. So I want to do a quick announcement while we are starting out here. So we're doing we've been toying with this idea for a bit, and we are gonna just kind of go with it, I guess, because we've all been talking about it a bunch. So I guess we just put it out there now. So we're gonna be doing the if you guys remember last year, we did the charity stream for Extra Life, which is a charity for Children's Miracle Hospital Network,
Oh,
and
sick.
they do a bunch of really cool stuff, helping kids with diseases. It's just a very good it's a good thing for helping infrastructure of an important organization. And so last year we raised over $3,000, and we all just sort of streamed different CTF challenges, and we let everybody in the chat, hack a server through Twitch chat, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, no, it was a really fun time. So this year we're going to be doing something a little bit different, but we're going to be doing the same charity work again. We're going to be doing an IoT CTF. So what that is it's going to be essentially it's going to be some teams that are going to be able to have a C2 and try to hack as many vulnerable IoT or ICS devices that we can emulate in a virtual network in a 24-hour period of time. We'll have some other interactive stuff as well for players or people in the chat. But we'll be streaming that. It'll be a death match of who can take over the most vulnerable devices, and pretty much everything is in scope as long as it's within the VPC, besides DDoSing, because that's annoying. But it should be a lot of fun. We'll have more details on it, but we really need to kind of hash it out with some people who would want to talk with us about it. So basically, we need people that are competent with like Terraform and Ansible for provisioning infrastructure. We're gonna try to work with an AWS and hopefully not get some cease and desist letters. Maybe they can give us a little bit of a break here.
Add it to the collection.
But we'll need basically an infrastructure team. So if you are somebody who is super into Terraform, Ansible, CloudFormation, any sort of infrastructure stuff where you're provisioning massive amounts of nodes very quickly and effectively, we need you to help us with volunteer stuff. We also need people who are competent at working with virtualization and containers. So if you are into Docker and QEMU and just containerizing everything, we really need you for the virtualization team. So we're going to be virtualizing some vulnerable firmware images and storing them in or running them in Docker containers for people to hack. And then we also need people who are competent with working with code, both Go and C, to help us work on the C2 servers as well as the bot agents and the infrastructure of how the bots are going to connect back to the game server. So we have a big plan of how this is going to go out. But if you are interested in helping out with this, just DM at ThugCrowd on Twitter, and we can invite you to our chat about this. So we're going to be trying to make it a more structured thing. We're going to need a lot of people to help because there's a lot of stuff that's going to go into it. But we should be able to get a good amount of buy-in from people, and it'd definitely be interesting for researchers and people who want to see how people actually develop exploits on IoT and ICS devices, and who we'll give that it'll be interesting for those researchers as well as anybody who actually wanted to hit the scary looking PLC they found on Shodan, but never actually want to touch it in real life. Now's your chance. So we'll have information about registering as a team, but right now we just need people to help with the infrastructure part. So again, at ThugCrowd, we need infra, virtualization, and low-level bot teams. So thank you. That's my big announcement for the day, I guess. Does anybody have any questions on this?
Just want to say I think it's going to be pretty awesome.
That's really cool of you guys.
I think it's going to be fun being able to hit those ICS boxes or hit those firmwares and have it hard crash and go into what would normally be an unrecoverable state and continue, which is one of the reasons why you don't touch those things, because they break real easy.
They do break very easily. I mean, it's definitely going to be a good opportunity for people to play around with stuff that they normally would never want to play around with.
I mean, I definitely always want to play around with it. I just shouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
That's more what I mean. Is you don't want to touch it. Please don't touch anything like that in real life. But we know a lot about what people are doing with it, and we want to be able to understand it and let people sort of, let their hair down. Just let's get it up.
Also, if you're having problems with the challenge, you will be able to donate in.
Yes. So we'll have more stuff like that too, as far as infrastructure for interacting with the chat, and also, maybe potentially buying a hint. Might have a black market of exploits. Who knows? But we'll see. We're gonna have to virtualize hack forums too. This is crazy.
Oh jeez.
Oh god.
All right. Well, yeah. Let's get into the news. So, I'm sure everybody here has their thing here. This is the U.S. Department of FUD has kindly given us some of their infrastructure for posting our news this week. Let's get right into it. So the first one here is pretty interesting, and this headline I wasn't exactly sure because it's more of like a theoretical thing, but it's I guess being actually used, and it's being used also by stuff in our called similarly in the Goodreads research by Amit. People have figured out a way to spoof wireless emergency alerts, which can send out Amber Alerts, presidential alerts, and other sorts of extreme safety alerts to phones that are connected to the tower.
I mean, the thing that got me about this is like the headline is super clickbaity. It's like it sends
It's
it out to a
very
stadium. Yeah, and you read through it and it's like, no, they sent it to like a couple of devices and it's like caged and whatever. The other thing is, because it's caged is probably one of the reasons why it actually falls back to this system, which is CMAS, like Commercial Mobile Alert System. And it's meant for like three things, like alerts issued by the president or higher authority of a geolocation. So, and then for imminent threats to safety or life. So I guess if there's a fire, if you're in California and you're surrounded by fire, they can send you a thing that says, hey, you're surrounded by fire, if you didn't notice. And then Amber Alerts or child abduction emergencies, which is interesting because that's when I guess it can sort of go like, not so much sending out messages say, hey, there's a nuke coming, but messages like, look out for this person or something like that, which based on like being a proximity based attack, I guess it's we manipulate environments in the immediate vicinity, I guess.
Plasma brings up something I'm not familiar with. It says, don't towers have a P2P system for EAS? I think if a tower misbroadcasts, others will repeat it. For this, I don't know.
I think this system as well, I'm not sure if CMAS actually is targeted from its direct proximity or if it will propagate. And the other thing is, I'm not sure that it doesn't actually specify if the devices were connected to the peered towers, because like the peered cells, because they were doing it in a cage, which is why I speculate, the cage causing the fallback. But I don't know.
I'm not really sure. But yeah, no, it's definitely interesting though to see this sort of stuff just coming out. Will continue to come out because LTE and other things like this are standards that are difficult to change at scale. So if you do find a bug or some way to spoof and do different attacks on LTE networks, they'll be there for a bit.
Yeah, it also wasn't 100% success rate either, is what they found, but it was pretty high. It was like in the 90s, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. That's if everyone around you gets an alert message and you don't, you sort of just go, well, like, I guess the 10 people around me got it.
Yeah.
They'll tell you.
Yeah.
Taking
When they start
presidential
screaming.
alerts. What could possibly go wrong?
I love those. It just reminded me of those, like when Trump sent out the presidential alert like a few months ago, and all of like the ones that were just like you up and just a presidential alert. It's like, what's gonna happen? It's gonna be like, send nudes, like,
Is anyone up? NBHNC?
yeah.
Yeah, it could be interesting though. I think if say you could perform this on a red team engagement and you're in a building that was shielded, so there's if you're in one of those buildings that doesn't have the LTEs inside, and you did take in a femto and sent this kind of thing out, you can send out a message, for example, like everyone has to evacuate the building or whatever, which would make things a lot easier for you because nobody's in the building while you are. So, I mean, there's different ways that this could be used for legitimate engagements as opposed
For tactical ship posting, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's worth
tactical.
noting also that in the paper, in the abstract, they say that they used like commercially available SDRs. They modified open source libraries, and that the 50,000 mark was reached with 4 different base stations.
Yeah, it was either like a usurp or a blade RF, which,
Yeah, your Blade RF would be my guess. I mean, they're pretty cheap.
I think they mentioned usurps, but blade RF would be like the cheap way for full duplex.
Yeah, about $600, and it does LTE with onboard FPGA and stuff. Pretty good. Just in case anybody wanted to build their own femtos for legitimate purposes.
Hell yeah. Speaking of building your own things, this Raspberry Pi that was used to hack NASA, pretty cool.
Not just
Oh, boy.
Hardware.com has an absurd amount of ads, and all the ads on the page are all the same exact ad. I have a left and right sidebar ad, a giant top ad, and then it's like half the page is another ad, and it's all for the same thing. And then there's a bottom banner ad, and it has the same thing on it as well. It's unacceptable.
And that ad is for
Fire.
Dollar VPN Club.
Yes, it would.
Free
Well, yeah,
don't
rip to Dollar VPN Club real quick. They were suspended, Dollar VPN Club, our beloved sponsor, by Twitter for copyright infringement. So, yeah.
Damn.
Oh, don't think of nobody start any other dollar clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can only be $1 club.
They can only be one.
Can only
It was
be one.
weird because I saw that Dollar Shave Club followed Dollar VPN Club, and then 2 days later they were just banned.
I think
You
that's
know
called stalking. That's cyber stalking.
Yeah,
What if you had a $2 VPN club? Would that be copyright infringement?
You know what? I think that there are a lot of L's in Dollar VPN Club that can be masqueraded as I's that can be masqueraded as L's. So I think that it can realistically never stop.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think it's there should be a fight to the death for all copyright infringement cases, or whoever holds patents. If you want someone's patent, you fight them to the death in a cage match. And if me,
A cage match, sponsored by Steakums.
right?
It's like racing for pinks, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
Racing for pinks, and not in the DG method, but
They could just go with dollar VPN club.
Wait, what'd you say?
I said they could just go with dollar VPN club.
Yes. I like dollar fake Amber Alert Club. It's pretty good as well. So, this next one here is about a Raspberry Pi that was put in NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and somehow from April 2018 to now, they only got 500 megabytes of data, or what is it? Gigabytes?
well,
What
they
it was.
did. It was megabytes, 500 megabytes, but they were targeting specific mission data apparently. But this is nothing new, and I see 2 things about this: one that I love and one that I hate. The one that I love is that JPL is still getting smashed this long later. It's still going. People are still targeting JPL. And the thing that I hate is that they use the Raspberry Pi because I just hate. That's people's go-to Dropbox is the most obvious thing that everybody knows what it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why it's so good, though.
Yeah.
Somebody brings in a Raspberry Pi and plugs it into the network, and the network admin is just like, "What are you doing? Why didn't they do that?" That's a good question.
Yeah. But apparently the new Raspberry Pi, the Pi 4, I think, is going to be running the newest version of Debian that's going to be coming out next month.
Nice.
Yeah, Buster.
Yep.
Do you think that this is just one giant Raspberry Pi and Toy Story 4 tie-in? This whole hack?
So it can only be.
Next level marketing.
It's inconceivable.
And I think there's more to this story that's not. I mean, there's obviously a lot more that's not being publicized, but like, what is the deal with this Raspberry Pi? Do they have it in a vulnerable part of their network or something, or did it get compromised along the way? There's so many questions.
Yeah.
I think
Was it
it's,
compromised or was it planted?
I believe it was compromised from looking at this somewhere, because it had been on the network for some time. Looked like somebody had brought it in and it got popped. But I mean, if you're doing network asset discovery, like the Raspberry Pi prefix is pretty obvious. You should look at your networks layer 2.
Yeah.
Maybe they named it a Roku device name, and it was just by the break room.
Yeah, they were pirating Crunchyroll off of it, and then just
Yeah.
Sorry, open a lec.
It was named Anime Box. No one wanted to unplug it.
it's too important.
So I think a good takeaway from this is if you think it's a good idea to take anything into your workplace and plug it into the work network, just don't.
Please don't.
Yeah, and if you see somebody who's plugging in a Raspberry Pi at work, just be like, what are you doing? Stop.
It's like Dave's quote unquote anime box.
Yeah. Horrid.
Yes. So the next one here, pretty cool. 20,000 Linksys routers are the key history of every device ever connected.
Oh god.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like a feature to me.
Well, what's crazy about this is that not all these Linksys routers from this era are running DDWRT, but it's separate. It's like the prime time for the custom firmware images.
Yeah. So, I mean, you would expect, I guess, something like this to happen, but it's just a matter of like, I guess, how can this information be used? I mean, does anybody have any specific sort of things that they would be worried about specifically about this sort of thing happening? No.
I mean, this is just like you would look at this as like an extension of Wiggle, right? So if you imagine that, you get someone's MAC address from, if they say they post a screenshot or whatever that contains their MAC on their LAN, and then it's leaking out.
Yeah, it's just decentralized, right? This is what we were talking about last week, decentralization.
Yeah.
I think as well, like these are pretty old routers as well. Like if you're still running an old router, maybe look at upgrading. Like it might still work, but it doesn't mean it should stay there. When you see people with old routers, yeah.
Hopefully none of those routers are the AC 1750.
I have to say, I really like the image of the guy on the top of the page, just like this Navy guy getting hosed down. I feel like that needs to be reused in every article about a leak of any kind.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
That's how it happens.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think these devices are probably going to end up in Mirai at some point, and someone figures out how to write, how to port exploits.
Yeah, it is interesting that 25,000 devices were leaking 756,000 unique MAC addresses. So it's like that's a pretty wild number.
Yeah.
Although I guess when you talk about like coffee shops, right? Like a lot of these could be placed in public places, public networks. So.
Absolutely.
I wonder what the correlation is like between clients. Like if you see someone going between their work and their coffee shop, or their coffee shop in their home, or their friends' houses, stuff like that.
For sure.
Were the actual router MAC addresses leaked too? Because you could probably look them up on like a war driving map and see where they were.
That's true. I was thinking about the different ways in which this data could be used to actually, provide some insight into some sort of tracking of some sort. I mean, this sort of stuff is sort of analytics between networks, between websites, all sorts of things like that. Those are all things that are commonly used by people to track others. So. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see if this data would be scraped and leveraged in some way. But that's up to the viewers.
Yeah.
If you
they're-
if you look at your own router, sorry, Shell.
Oh no, I was gonna say if people like this kind of thing, there's an interesting talk called "Stalking a City for Fun and Frivolity," which deals with kind of this exact same stuff of setting up a bunch of boxes in different places, a bunch of Raspberry Pis, and then tracking around MAC addresses from place to place and being able to map them, and it's like by having these boxes call back.
Oh, for crying out loud! Oh no!
Yeah, and then
Cable's like,
subnote to that is that device like cell phones now do MAC or can do MAC address randomization when connecting to networks.
yeah, so when iPhones are in scan mode, they're rotating max at that point as well.
Jesus.
So they're less trackable, but I mean I don't know who else is doing that. But with Apple Watches, and smartwatches and stuff like that, Bluetooth max are just like splattered out onto the air everywhere you go. There was a project someone did where they got the same train every day, and they tracked Bluetooth MAC addresses within Ubertooth when they got on and off trains. Just a project, just all off the air stuff.
Absolutely.
But I
It
think
looks like mine's vulnerable or whatever. Mine's affected. Great.
actual routers that like so your current router, your updated router now, like is probably managed via your ISP with like TR-069 as a protocol, and you can push firmware updates and scrape stuff out of it as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I bought this from Best Buy, so. Oh well.
It's the default. Like usually the routers that come from ISPs are going to be managed with TR-69. So like a lot of the data can be pulled from them over that protocol anyway by default.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and
Disable
that's
that if you like.
wild.
Right.
But let's go to the next story here. Pretty cool. Walmart is rolling out some AI to prevent checkout theft.
Oh, AI drink.
Welcome to
They
Walmart.
have,
Lobby.
They have done quite a bit, I guess, to just track whether or not people are scanning items or miss-scanning items. And yeah, they're just going for it, I guess. It seems like a little bit of overkill to avoid paying a worker to just be there.
So do you think that they're using the same surveillance footage that they're already keeping anyway?
I don't know. Maybe they're training on that. I mean, they must be training on that. I mean, it would have to also correlate somehow with the individual POS that is being something scanned into. So it's interesting to see how that sort of model actually works and how they actually end up doing that.
This article activates my rant trap card every time. So this stuff is, there's no way that there's not gonna have a million false positives. There's just no way. They're gonna have to develop some kind of specialized monitoring capability. They're gonna have to have new cameras installed at every one of these check-in lanes for sure. I don't think they can use what they have existing. It's gonna be a mess. At least during the initial rollout. They may make it better as time goes on, or they may just throw it all away. I just don't like seeing people jump on this particular bandwagon so quickly, because the technology, I'm not sure that it's ready yet.
Yeah, and there's always cases where this probably won't detect someone who's slapping fake barcodes on things and that kind of stuff. There's always going to be plenty of ways to get around this that the vision itself just can't get around. But below hanging, I guess people who are shoplifting probably aren't, taking it that far. But
I mean, it's pretty easy to go on the various websites, figure out the weight of the devices, or the items that you want to steal. And then you print out the barcode of it. You might even be able to print it out online at home, and then just slap a label onto something of the same weight, but is smaller or less price.
Yeah.
But a lot of the barcode readers as well have configuration codes that you can scan, and it will change the operation of the reader.
That's true. Especially
So
really cool talk about that. I want to find
A lot
it.
of times when you go to these self checkouts, it does this thing where it tries to sense your bag to see if you're bringing your own bag. But if you just lift the bag off the sensor, then it asks for the attendant to put on their code. You can usually just watch them put on the code. So someone who's dedicated enough to actually like fuck with the POS system for the self checkouts could probably get into it.
Oh yeah, and there's also like mag spoof, and also with the weight thing, you don't even have to like obviously slide it over on the actual thing, since it, you know, the optical scanner, you just have something that's generally the same shape and size.
So this is our shoplifting segment. But I think what would be an interesting correlation would, like, say this technology works, which I think we've pretty much decided that it's probably not going to work. Say it does work. What would be interesting is tracking the cards that were used for people who consistently misscan items. So you could, you know, correlate, again, following the money trail, as very common technique to find people. If someone's not paying for certain items, but they paid for other items, and there's, you know, a payment associated, whose card is it? Seems pretty scary when you sort of start to abstract it out.
Well, then you get into some really dangerous territory, which I also have pretty strong opinions about, which is like what is that based on? Because the kinds of logic that you're working with, the underlying technology relies on all kinds of things that are really, really hard to determine. It's very black boxy. So it's very easy to say, like, I want to select for this one particular thing in my AI. And then you get all kinds of other crap that just gets in there, and you don't even really like realize it until you go back and look at the results. But I mean, if you actually audit the results, which not everybody does, so you could really easily end up with a system that profiles people based on all kinds of different factors that you didn't want to select for, but ended up that way anyway.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I'm not a compliance expert, but I think it's a potential PCI DSS violation if you're storing credit card numbers for transactional purposes and you don't tell your customer that you're going to be using your fucking AI thing to see if they're shoplifting or scamming the system or whatnot.
Oh boy.
You can do it's not a DSS infringement. Like, you can definitely like the card numbers are stored hashed anyway. Plus, like, generally you have the first 6 and the last 4
to like explicitly use it for a purpose.
No, it's as long because it's the purpose is already for transaction records for a business, so they can hold it. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's sketchy, but they'll pass. Plus, like most DSS auditors, lol.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in that field at all, but I've been reading the legislation lately, so it piqued my mind.
Yeah, it's also interesting that this is going to be used on like their own cashiers as well. Like, it doesn't mention it really, but like that's going to be one of the things that's where it's going to be implemented, is to make sure that their own cashiers and their own employees are scanning things correctly.
I mean, this reminds me of
insider threat.
It reminds me of a good story when I went to the supermarket with my mom, actually, and I bought a case of beer. And the guy's like, no, don't put it up on the thing, it's too heavy. And then he didn't scan it, and we left, and we got a free case of beer. Like, whose fault was that? I don't know.
So that's something that I find really interesting, is like with that kind of system, you don't have a human element, so it's difficult to have like an aspect of forgiveness. So like, let's say, you know, some teenager steals something from Walmart or whatever. Is he banned from their stores for life? You know, how do you respond to that infraction? And that gives a lot of power to those companies that they probably shouldn't be having.
Well, also, this seems like it's just going in for like just like misscanning or not scanning. Like, it doesn't seem like this is tracking, you know, oh, hey, I just stuck this bottle in my pocket and walked, you know. So it's interesting that it's
one thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's so much like tech being invested in this one bit, which is I don't know how much of you know, as far as shoplifting, like misscanning or not scanning or fake scanning accounts for.